who is the advisor to the Prime Minister of Ukraine. And we are especially pleased to have you because you've been working on the issues of European integration between the European Union and EU. Mr. Pyatnitsky has been Commissioner for European integration. He was the head of Ukrainian delegation on Ukraine-EU agreement and issues on trade agreement. He's been also Deputy Minister of Economy of Ukraine and the head of the delegation in negotiations between Ukraine to the World Trade Organization. And finally, it's also clear that you've been also working and still working in the academia, so that you could also provide some sort of both your practical experience, combine it with your academic approach and experience. The floor is yours. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation, and good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. It's really a pleasure and honor for me to be here today with you, and I really Oh, now it works. Sorry, today, after this very interesting and comprehensive presentation, I would like to talk a little bit about the situation in Ukraine and how we are going to implement agreement which was recently signed, ratified in Ukraine, and mainly ratified by the EU members. And of course, maybe if you will have afterwards certain questions, of course I'm ready to respond on these questions, of course within the scope of my competence, because frankly speaking, during the whole my professional life, I'm mainly dealing with the international trade, and I have the really different experience, starting from the European integration, then continuing the different issues with the WTO, and it was not mentioned that I was also responsible for the negotiations and conclusion of the, from my point of view, it's a very interesting agreement with EFTA countries, and we have very good experience of communication with the Norway, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and Iceland in the process of this negotiation. It was our so-called first lessons of the European integration, and we learned a lot which we used later on in the process of our negotiations with the European Union and vice versa, because even in agreement with EFTA, we have some kind of references to at that time it was to the future agreement with the European Union. So it was very interesting and really comprehensive process. And I will start from maybe some facts that practically, if you're talking about the association agreement, this is not the story of today's. This is a story we started long before today, and it's almost 10 years of our very comprehensive work on the issues of European integration. And when we started in 2006, our first consultations with the Commission on about the future FTA, and it was not mentioned even association agreement at that time. It was just some preliminary thoughts about the different chapters or different subjects which will be covered by the future comprehensive agreement. And of course, we started not only our consultations with Commission, but we also started our internal job. And it was linked also to the process of our accession to the WTO, because it was the first steps in our so-called work on transformation of our legislation. And what was done during the first years of 2000, it was mainly oriented on the implementation of WTO commitments and WTO rules. And of course, it's created a very good, from my point of view, very good background for the future negotiations. Of course, after we finalized our negotiation in 2011. And in between, as I mentioned already, in 2010, we concluded our agreement with EFTA. And we ratified it, and it's entered into force in the mid of 2012. And of course, during the certain period of time, we concentrated our efforts on technical corrections, initialing of the agreement, and everything was done during the different governments under the so-called leadership of the different president. And for us, this is also one of the challenges, because it was necessary to somehow to protect the main ideas which we introduced into this agreement together with our European colleagues. Because frankly speaking, when we negotiated, for example, chapters related to the public procurement, we always, during the all years of our existence as an independent country, we were heavily criticized for the high level of corruption in the sphere of public procurement. And a lot of efforts was again spent, and in 2004, for example, with assistance of the World Bank and other financial institutions, international financial institutions, we established the system of public procurement, mainly, of course, on the paper, yeah, in the law. We adopted a number of laws which really represent the best existing practice at that time. And frankly speaking, today we, to a certain extent, achieving which we already achieved back in 2004. So this is not new experience. This is a basically extension of the experience which exists since the first years maybe of our independence, but it was not properly enforced. And in our agreement with European Union concerning, for example, the public procurement, we also, again, introduced it, or again, accepted the European system of regulation in this sphere, despite the fact that, again, our previous government, our previous leadership traditionally heavily criticized now as a highly corrupted and, of course, a lot of other maybe unpleasant things. In 2014, 2015, we signed, ratified, and the into force. And first of all, European Union provided us autonomous preferences. And I'm not going to explain why Ukraine didn't apply it in a full the DCFTA part, mainly the practically two articles, the Article 29.1, which related to the ordinary customs duties and export duties, but nevertheless, from the 1st of January 2016, DCFTA will enter into force in a full, and of course, this is a very comprehensive document, as I mentioned already, and of course, it covers not only trade issues, it covers also the variety of political issues, legal issues, the sectoral cooperation, sectoral integration with the different European policies. And of course, this is a document which practically oriented into the future. And for us, we treated this document as some kind of, again, the program for at least next decade, which we are going to implement. Of course, the rationale behind this, again, decision, it's to a certain extent very simple. To certain, it's really complicated. But I can say that this is, in any case, this is challenge for our country, because the gap between the level of economic development, the development of different institutions, the legal basis, it's huge. And of course, we should, during the relatively short period of time, we should really cover this gap and to achieve the level at which exists at least in maybe not the most advanced, but in, again, so-called regular, not ordinary, regular members of European Union. And frankly speaking, even when we negotiated this agreement, we studied the experience of Norway as a country which never been the member of the European Union, but have the really comprehensive experience of coexistence with European Union, and very, from our point of view, from my point of view, very fruitful coexistence with the European Union. Of course, if we, again, we can talk about the different aspects of this agreement and the different key elements. For us, what is important, not just because sometimes people saying that this is agreement about, for example, liberalization of market access duties, for example, but not paying the attention to the really comprehensive work which should be done in the process of establishment of institutions, in capacity building. And I'm talking about the capacity building in different spheres, not only in business, but what was mentioned during the previous presentation, the capacity building in public service. And I was a little bit, again, positively surprised that 62,000 public servants already passed through the different studies related to the European integration. Unfortunately, I don't have such a figure, and I cannot just confirm, again, reject this figure. Maybe it's 62, but what is true that despite the fact that it was not always very positive, maybe, again, behavior of our political masters during this period. If we are talking about the European integration, and a lot of attention was paid to another vector of our political developments during the last years. I'm talking about the maybe development of relations, even not within the CIS, but with customs union, and it was a lot of political motivation behind these actions. But nevertheless, during this period of time, a lot was done for promoting the idea of European integration and for promoting of European values. And first of all, we are talking about the rule of law. Yeah? We are talking about the different, again, existence of different policies and communication between society and governments, business and governments, business and society, and of course the different policies like competition policy, protection of intellectual property. The best example, and again, it was mentioned that, for example, e-governance and that I have the maybe academic background. I graduated from cybernetics department of the Kyiv University, and at that time we learned a lot about e-governance, and we have some classical again studies which was done in the Soviet time about this so-called e-governance, and at that time it was the studies of academic Glushkov, who is Ukrainian and who again established the even school of cybernetics in Ukraine. And when we studied these ideas, it was early 80s, and the ideas basically was so advanced, and that now we should maybe properly implement it to achieve the level which Ukraine should achieve, maybe, and if we are talking about the comparison with Estonia, I think that Ukraine should be much more in advanced position than, for example, Estonia, despite the fact that we are talking about the different scale and of this work, the different scale of the country, population, and number of other things. If you are talking about the, again, DCFTA in a very short manner, mainly, as I mentioned already, for us it was clear, this is basically rules which are implemented, and the institutions which should be established or newly established or again modernized existing institutions. And again, in previous presentation it was mentioning that from time to time it was different level of public servants. It's difficult to say what was the quality of these public servants, because it doesn't matter whether it's 300,000 or 400,000 or 500 of these people, and the level of their understanding of their role, of their task, and others. And this is still ongoing process, and this is still a lot of discussion around the task of the public servants. And from this point of view, the very to certain extent even institutions, and to improve our public service in a way which will help to really properly implement. And this structure demonstrates that mainly this is, except the first maybe item, the national treatment market access for goods, this is tariffs. Yeah, all others part of the agreement, they related to the implementation of different policies or different legislation which exists in the European Union, and it's related to the very technical and very comprehensive reform in sphere of technical regulation, sanitary, phytosanitary. Of course, if you are talking about the services sector, which is quite comprehensive in the EU, all issues related to the establishment of company, again, regulation in different services sector, and again, electronic commerce. I'm not mentioning about electronic governance. The movement of capital, it's also the issue which is quite important and which represent the huge part of this agreement, and all other issues, again, which covered by this general name, terms of trade. This is customs, public procurement, intellectual property, competition. These are the policies which exist in the European Union, and which is, for us, it's clear that it's impossible to implement in 1 year, no, in 5 years, in 10 years. This is a comprehensive work, and this is practically, if we politically decided to go into direction of the close the links with the European Union, it's our tasks and task of the government for the indefinite future, I can say. For these purposes, in 2014, we adopted the action plan, and this is comprehensive action plan for the next few years. And of course, now we're in the process of implementation of this action plan. From my point of view, at this stage, if we can compare with the process of negotiations and implementation, we were more successful in the process of negotiation than now in the process of implementation, because again, this is a new challenge. For us, we decided, or this is a number of initiatives, to launch a lot of different reforms. And it's these reforms related to the different spheres of our life. This is juridical reform, this is tax reform, reform of the customs administration, reform of the different control bodies, and everything we decided to launch at the same time. We are going to modernize our public service. We decided to decrease the number of public servants, but sometimes these actions based on a very mechanistical approach, and sometimes it's not based on the in-depth analysis of functions of the public service, but more on the some kind of arithmetic calculations, whether it's better to have 1,000 people working for the servants working for the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, or 500. And sometimes our, again, new political masters or new ministers who are responsible for different reforms, they concentrated more attention and more efforts on this absolutely arithmetic approach rather than on comprehensive understanding of the substance of reforms and what is necessary to do and what consequences and how to attract the relevant advice. Because it's really difficult to understand how at the same time one minister can have 50 or 100 advisors, and how he or she can react on all these advices and develop the proper strategy. And sometimes now this activity looks very chaotic, and from one point of view, we appreciate a lot the different assistance from international society, but sometimes it's also necessary to understand the capacity to absorb all these advices and all this assistance, because it generates from Ukrainian side, in some Ukrainian society and some non-governmental organizations, some kind of rent-seeking behavior. From another side, from side of donors, from side of international society, some kind of competition on different topics. Because if, for example, now we are going to improve the situation on our customs, and we are going to implement the recently signed agreement on simplification of trade and WTO agreement, and now immediately we have the support. I am not going to talk about the number of countries and what countries, but now they competed. Who will be the first, who will help a lot more, and what system will be implemented, what system is better. And even if you are talking about the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, which is one of the leading ministries in the system of coordination of European integration, and traditionally this ministry covering the not only trade issues, but a number of other issues, including the protection of intellectual property, government procurement, protection of consumer rights, and number of others. It's the about practically 35, here I mentioned the legislative acts, but this is 35 different practically topics. This is not just one single legislative act, and this is a number of legislative acts. This is the subordinate acts, and on the level of government, on different institutions. But nevertheless, we have also the good experience when in the process of negotiations and later on the example of technical regulation, we launched this work, or we started. As I mentioned, that we started our consultation in 2006. We launched the process of implementation of the European regulation in this sphere practically in the mid of first decade of 2000. And initially it was only small steps, but even in 2009, you can see immediately upon our accession to the WTO, and before we conclude the agreement with the EFTA, it was clear for us that whether you going to really improve your capacity to export to the European market and, of course, the EFTA market, or not dependence from your own efforts, and you should really be efficient in improvement of your legislation, and not only legislation, but to pay much more attention on building the institutional capacity and enforcement of this legislation. And you can see that during this time, a lot was done. A lot of different acts were entered into force, or some of them in parallel were adopted. And mainly you can see that today we have the system of technical regulation which developed mainly on the basis of European approach. Before we started to implement the DCFTA, we mainly adopted the technical regulation which exists in the European Union, and we continue to do so. Of course, this is, if you're talking about benefits, it's mainly oriented for our domestic use. And when we communicated to the different stakeholders, to the business, to the society, of course, we are trying to explain what will be the major benefits. But of course, behind all these maybe very simple and clear phrases, sometimes it's difficult to explain to the particular business what is the real benefits for example, for producers of tomatoes, or for producers of, I don't know, electronic appliances, and or the providers of different services, how they benefit. And of course, we are using the very positive examples. Here you can see the one of the most famous chocolates produced by factory Roshen. Yeah, this is the property of our president Poroshenko. Yeah? This is one of the good examples, one of the positive examples, not because he is president now. He is successful, and he was successful as a businessman. And it was example of the good communication with the business when we negotiated the DCFTA. one of the first business which came to the negotiating team and presented their vision, what they would like to see in the agreement in the CFTA was business related to the production of confectionery. And based on this vision and their understanding and their involvement in this process, it was agreed the so-called sectoral initiative on chocolate, 0 for 0. So, and what is interesting that before that, when we negotiated this FTA with EFTA, we agreed with Switzerland, for example. If we will agree 0 for 0 with European Union, we will reconsider also our part of the agreement. And it will be also 0 for 0 between Ukraine and Switzerland on chocolate. And now we are waiting for the positive response from Switzerland now, because we are now more advanced in this sphere. Of course, the expected results, I can't say that results, it's obvious, but in general, it's presented in this maybe few sentences. And of course, today we can see more and more the positive signs of the existence of this agreement, despite the fact that later on, a little bit later on, I can show you the figures about our trade and, of course, the first results of our trade with the European Union, maybe not so optimistic, but nevertheless. This is estimates which we made before entering this agreement into force. And of course, if you are talking about the different sectors, it's different estimates. But the maybe most positive estimates related to the our agriculture sector, and this, if you are talking about the pure economic consequences. But what is more important, this is the maybe changes, institutional changes in the Ukrainian society, because the what is necessary to do, it's really very comprehensive, and sometimes it's maybe not so popular tasks which should be implemented in the nearest future. And because of the not easy time for us now, we already implemented set of austerity packages. We start to think more about the different actions in sphere of energy savings, in sphere of the improving the quality of the products, the again better use of labor force, more efficient use of labor force. And of course, we cannot expect immediate results, but we're expecting that in the nearest future we can overcome the present situation. Of course, I can talk a lot about the present economic crisis, because recently, last week, we presented in Geneva during the Balance of Payment Committee our situation in this sphere. And in general, it was the understanding from WTO members and general understanding that the situation is really tough in Ukraine now. But if we are talking about the as a consequences, maybe some of different actions, whether it's agreement or whether it's other developments in Ukraine, we have a new structure in our international trade, whether it's related to geographical or commodity structure, and it's also reflected the recent developments in production of the different type of goods. Here it's mainly the goods. Today, EU is number one, our trading partner. The traditional role of CS country is still substantial, but I can show you on next slide the sharp decrease of our trade with Russian Federation. And of course, if we are talking about the again structure of our trade, commodity structure of our trade, it's also we facing the maybe new challenge, because traditionally the base metals was our major export products, and different chemical products was our major, with orientation to Russian Federation, to CIS countries. Now, because of the recent developments in our country and in neighboring countries, of course, we going through the maybe dramatic changes, but these changes will lead to this restructuring of our economy in the nearest future. And here you can see the again what is the difference even in 4 years' time. We have, if we are talking about our again major trading destinations and major trade, and what is really in the first quarter, you can see this is one. In the first quarter of 2015, we lost 2/3 of our trade with comparison of first quarter 2014 with Russian Federation, so it's even further decrease in our trade, and it leads to the basically a new approach in again development and understanding of our future. Thank you for your attention, and of course I'm ready to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kratinsky, for your very in-depth overview of the situation concerning the period after signing and also the period that was covering the situation before signing the association agreement between Ukraine and the EU in 2014. And I think, and I expect that many of people in the audience have different questions, so please address them to one of us, including me also, if you have them. Thank you. Anyone would like to start? If you ask a question, could you please identify yourself first? Yes, please.
My name is Kåre Dahl Martinsen. I come from the Norwegian Institute of Defense Studies. I would like to thank you for a very comprehensive and instructive presentation of the current situation of the Ukraine. I have one question pertaining to your relationship with the European Union. In the past, when the European Union was negotiating the entrance of new members, it was often claimed that as long as membership was a realistic possibility, the European Union had a lot of transformative power in these countries. Now, in the case of the Ukraine, membership is off the table, at least for the time being. So could you say something about the transformative power of the European Union now that you do not have membership as an option? I mean, there will be a lot of social and economic problems as you implement the acquis communautaire, and people on the normal people start feeling what the costs of this, and still they don't have membership as an option. Then the question arises, why should they go through with this? Thank you.
You know that from my point of view, Ukraine have, during the 25 years of independence, Ukrainian society went through different challenges, and this is maybe for our people, this is a set of unique challenges. We started very peacefully when we obtained our independence. Today we are in the situation of war, and we also have the different challenges. In mid-90s, it was, for example, the level of inflation achieved 10,000%. The people lost everything: their savings, their jobs. They practically change even their mind. The transformation from the Soviet Union to the independence was very painful. Next time it's happened, it was the Orange Revolution in 2004, and it was again a lot of optimism, and it was the revolution of society. It was not a revolution of politicians. Then the revolution of 2000, again, period 2013 and 2013, early 2014. And you know that practically, even without the different promises from the European side, because the EU made a lot of promises concerning the economic prosperity, concerning the visa-free regime. You know, our society, it's strange that despite all these difficulties, despite all these promises, in general, society have this pro-European, again, intention, yeah, to be closer to Europe. We recognize ourselves as a Europeans. We never recognize ourselves as something separate. And maybe this is also the intention to not to forget our Soviet period of time, but just one of the tools how to move from this period in our history. Maybe I cannot say this was bad period or good period of our history. It was, again, different periods. But the movement from the poor, maybe not with high development of different spheres of life, to the maybe to some better examples, some again, some achievements, some new values, because rule of law, fight with corruption, the proper judges, a lot of other things. It's normal behavior of the people just to get all of this. Yeah, this is positive, absolutely positive values. That's why, even despite the fact that we have again, European perspective, but for ordinary people, what does it mean? Membership in the European Union. Nobody knows what does it mean. Yeah. If they can, again, travel from their village on the border with the European Union to their neighbors, to their relatives, to another border, what does it mean for them, whether they will join, whether Ukraine will join the EU or not? If you have the better communication, electronic communication, we can see the European TV, European channels. You have the right to express your views in media. What is the difference whether you are living in Ukraine as a member of EU or not? Yeah, and I mentioned already that we also used as a positive example the cooperation between Norway and European Union, Switzerland and the European Union. Personally, I prefer to have in Ukraine the not small Norway, I can say, the level of prosperity of Norway and level of prosperity in Switzerland, and not to be a member of EU, than to be a poor, so-called third sort of member in the EU.
Yeah, any further questions?
Petter Bauk, working in the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, just back from Ukraine, Kiev and Kharkiv on Friday, looking at the reform within the judicial sector. You didn't touch upon that, but what is interesting is what you said, that you were more successful in negotiations than in implementation, because the messages we got both from public institutions in Kiev, in Kharkiv, from civil society and international donors was that from adopting new laws to implementing them, that is the difficult task. That is where we do not manage to see progress. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you could elaborate a little on why this, in a way, it seems this is a challenge all across, also in the judicial sector, that to implement what you agree upon is the big task.
You know, traditional explanation which exists in Ukraine, this is resistance from the existing system, from juridical system, whether it's judges or whether it's Office of Prosecutor General or whether it's others. But again, from my point of view, traditionally we face the lack of political will to implement the comprehensive reforms. And we traditionally, what we had, the so-called political wish. And it was orally expressed a number of times, and in some cases, all our, I'm not talking only about politicians, I'm talking about the, again, non-governmental organization, the society, It was a lot of expectation, a lot of talks about the needs of different reforms. But when it was necessary really to contribute something to shift from talks to the real actions, unfortunately, we were not successful in that, and we're now maybe not so successful. And now we have, from my point of view, this is my individual opinion, that today, on the wave of the new revolution, we have some kind of new generation of people who mainly educated as a journalist. They were very active. Yeah, they are very talkative. They presenting trying to represent the different point of view, but mainly they represent their own point of view on the development of the country, based on the maybe some very general understanding of the situation in Ukraine, on very low level of understanding of different processes. But you know, the journalist knows everything. If they write one article, they are saying that they knows everything about economy, about jurisprudence, about, I don't know, about the launches of the missiles, and they can present this position. And now we have, again, this problem of some kind of devaluation of values, yeah? Because it's clear that I mentioned about these values, but if you talk a lot about these values but not doing something substantial, it's devaluate. And it will be some kind of depreciation from point of view of society at a certain stage. Look, guys, we remember the experience of Gorbachev. Democracy, perestroika, glasnost, hozrasчет, and number of other issues. Yeah, it was freedom of speech, everything. But after certain period of time, when it was no improvement in different spheres, people used these words in negative meaning. Yeah, or so-called Democrats, not Democrats, so-called Democrats, so-called reformists, so-called others. Yeah, and now after revolution. After each revolution, it's a huge expectation, yeah. But very low level of patience, because people should be patient. Also, they should maybe I can't say wait, but they should understand that it takes maybe not 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year. It takes years and years to achieve the certain visible progress, yeah. And we, during all this negotiation, we were heavily criticized. After each frankly, I was responsible for all these negotiations and for reporting, and it was interesting that after each round of negotiations, it was necessary to report about some success. All the time, success stories, what you achieved. But we were all the time in the middle of the process. Yeah, in the middle of the process, it takes more than 5 years to achieve these results. And only after that it was possible to report. Now it's the same situation, and frankly speaking, again, within the government, it's also, I cannot tell about all government, but within some agencies, this is idea, so-called idea of, this is some kind of business idea, because a lot of our new ministers, they're people from business. Quick wins. Every day they should report about quick wins. Where they should report? On some TV channels. Every week during the Sunday or Saturday talk show, they should explain what they achieved during the last week. And this is a big, huge achievements which create the new situation in the country. But frankly speaking, what they are now implementing at this stage, they're still implementing what was started at least in 2013. Because of this bureaucratic machine, because of the regular changes of the government. 2014, in the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, at that time I worked for this ministry, it was 3 ministers during 1 year. Can you achieve certain results if the new minister have the opposite view on the development of the different processes? Every time you're starting from scratch, just explaining to the minister the substance of the regular job of the ministry. And at the same time, every minister starting to present his concept of restructuring of the ministry. 3 ministers. 2 acting ministers. I was one of the acting ministers. During October and November, I was one of the acting ministers in the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade. So, from this point of view, I think this is one of the major challenge. Yeah, no stability and maybe no vision. Yeah, or lack of it. Not no, lack of vision. Yeah, from political point of view, and lack of political will, really, to be again some kind of constant in your will to implement different reforms. And not to say that predecessors made bad jobs, because one of the first words of the new minister, at that time it was Minister Sheremetov, who came into office in October 2014, one of his first words, he said that, look guys, everybody who are working for this ministry, you are people from Azarov's time, you are supporters of Azarov, and Azarov, he was our former prime minister during the time of Yanukovych, and you did bad job for your country. Okay, but maybe you're not, I asked him, maybe you're not going to sign the agreement with you? No, it was good done. But it was done during the previous time. And not everything is bad which was done during the previous time. And frankly speaking, during my 20 years in the different offices in practically not in different ministries even, because I started from the Ministry of International Trade, and then it was transformed into other ministry. We faced also this challenge, that some kind of immediate reaction that everything which was done previously, it was done not in a proper way, and it should be transformed immediately. Then we spent certain period of time for this immediate transformation in opposite direction. Then it was at a certain period of time, the minister recognized that not everything was done in negative way, and it's necessary maybe to continue the previous steps. And now, where we are, unfortunately, sometimes.
Thank you very much. Do we have more questions? I think now we could collect 2 or 3 questions because we don't have so much time. Yeah.
My name is Maura Loi, and I'm an intern at NUPI. And my question is, could you elaborate a little bit on the benefits the EU could get from Ukraine's membership? Thank you.
Some more questions?
Olav Berstad, Minister of Foreign Affairs. You mentioned, and we know that the negotiations with the EU concluded in 2011 under Azarov and Yanukovych. And
December 2011, yeah.
The government and the president were ready to sign soon after that. And then all the delays, etc., 2013. In the meantime, Russia objected to certain elements of the agreements and claimed that it would harm trade and their economic interests. When did this come up as an issue from the Russian side, and how did you, as members of the government, deal with it? What happened? When did this concern really start? I have also a second question, maybe to all 3 of you, namely that at least on our side, we sometimes point to Georgia as an example of effective combating of corruption, at least on the lower and effective restructuring of the public institutions. But how relevant is the Georgian experience when it comes to Ukraine? And now you even have Georgian governors, ministers, deputy ministers. I mean, there must be some affinity or some idea that Georgia is, in fact, a valid example or model of some sort for Ukraine in this situation. Thank you.
Concerning the first question, maybe about benefits for European Union, I think one of the major benefits that for European Union, in case if Ukraine will be successful in implementation of the agreement and practically the all positive practice which exists in the European Union, that EU will have the absolutely predictable, stable neighbor, and I hope that prosperous neighbor. And in general, I think this is, first of all, very positive, because if you have safe border, and now we recognize this in full, that what does it mean, safe border? What does it mean, the predictable, reliable, peaceful neighbor? Yeah. And from this point of view, I think this is a major benefit. If you're talking about economic benefit, again, this is economy of scale, and we can talk about the economic theory, and of course, the Ukrainian market may be not huge enough to really to, again, for further expansion of the European and huge increasing of the European economy, but positive effects, maybe some marginal effects, it's obvious. And especially if you're talking about this sphere like agriculture or different services sectors, and of course expansion of the European presence together with opportunities which exist in Ukraine to the third markets. And for example, now, despite all these difficulties which exist in Ukraine, we're expanding our presence or presence of our agriculture, food to the markets of the China, to the market of India, to the really huge market. So from this point of view, I think we can talk about the positive impacts to the European Union. But again, first of all, it should be decision for European Union what is more positive, what is maybe less positive, and frankly speaking, if you're talking about the nearest future, we are not pretended to generate problems for European Union as a potential member of the European Union. So we are not even in the process of negotiations. So even this is also some kind of positive results of conclusion of such of the agreements, without any formal or binding commitments for EU to guarantee to Ukraine the status of membership. Concerning the situation with, again, developments in 2011, 2012, frankly speaking, for people who participated in all these negotiations, and we were to a certain extent close to the decision-making process. It was really nice for us, this decision at the very late stage, not to sign the agreement. Even more, on the 20th of November 2013, it was the summit of CS countries in St. Petersburg, and the head of delegation was Prime Minister Azarov. And it was flight back from St. Petersburg to Kiev, and again later at the evening of 20th of November, it was no talks about any changes in the course, and no changes in the intention to sign the agreement on the 28th of November. And early at the morning on the 21st, it was again the decision of the government to so-called to postpone, not to sign this agreement, and with high probability it was direct order from president to prime minister to take such a decision during the meeting of the cabinet of ministers. But what is also interesting that some of the ministers who were so-called pro-Russian or pro-customs union and against this signing, they didn't initialize this decision of the government. Yeah? They distanced from this decision, and now practically this is the, I can say the only signature of prime minister, but a lot of ministers, they rejected, or maybe not rejected, they distanced from the signing of this decision. So it was purely politically motivated decision, and basically, or based on the certain agreed decision between the two presidents, President of Ukraine and President of Russian Federation. And you know the future developments in Ukraine, which happened after such a decision. You know that it was maybe to a certain extent very tragic developments, to a certain extent positive developments, and now it's. I know that we paid so high price for that we should not really be losers in this situation, and because very often when people telling about Ukraine, they saying that Ukraine never lose the opportunity to lose the opportunity. Yeah. So it's. I hope that this is not the case now.
Thank you. Given that the time is coming to an end, we can have just a very quick round with 2 small questions. So, Anatoly, no? If you could start.
I would just to make a short comment, because it was a question of what are the benefits of European Ukraine. And I think we can give an example from Norway, because if you look at Norwegian population has benefited a lot from paying on internet, and you can find out that this software was developed in Ukraine. So just an example of how the business could contribute to a better society. When it comes to my reflection upon the problems of Ukraine, and I think when we interviewed people, for me it was understanding that Ukraine is a kind of a position vicious circles. You have the problems which kind of not repeating, but let's say if you look at the small business and the taxation, there is slow-paying taxation culture. It means that governments usually will not get the revenues, and businesses say, "Why should I pay your taxes? Because I couldn't have any benefits from the government. This government is not transparent." So it means that the money is not coming to the municipalities. Municipalities don't have money to initiate the business services, and it repeats. So it goes around, and the question is, where should you kind of go and pick this up and saying, here we start solving the problem? And I think here a lot of I think international experience could help.
Thank you, Anatoly. One very short remark from me, and also final question to both of you. Coming to the question of how to transform Ukraine's EU, and the example of Georgia has been mentioned by you, Mr. Bergstad. And the thing is that one of the probably the most important solutions would be to change if we talk about particularly the public sector, I think it's really necessary to change the incentive structure, because that's probably at the core of this whole problem. And also based on our study with Anatoly during our focus group interviews, we found that people, those who serve in the public sector, they don't have many so to say incentives, or at least they don't see those incentives, or for example on their future career paths. Also because there are kind of different approaches, and there's no unified and effective system of that, so that people coming to the public sector don't really realize all the opportunities that may exist. That's the first thing. Another thing is that it's a very much widely known problem, but it's very low salaries, so that people, again, this is also kind of demotivating factor for them. Another also issue is that there's no performance evaluation system of public employees' work. So basically, it's hard to judge to what extent an employee, for example, has been able to achieve the set targets, because there are no such targets. There's just kind of general understanding that one has to, to deliver something, but it's not very much incentive-based system that would require from every individual to sort of, constantly self-develop, and also to be actually very much interested in working in the public sector. Even though people are interested coming, but they don't really see sort of the horizon on what they can do with that. So I think by changing this incentive structure would mean a lot for for substantial transformation of the public sector. And second, of course, again, I would like to stress the importance of the electronic government, because there's a lack of trust on this side of the population with respect to public officials because of the issue of intransparency, and also because the public service delivery, all different types of public services, they are delivered in a very inefficiently, and this of course creates a lots of concern and also a lack of trust for the different part of the society. So I think this could be two key elements. And my question to you, Mr. Pradinsky, is given the whole topic and our very interesting discussion, I would like to ask you, what do you see as being the next steps when it comes to the public sector reform in the years to come? If we talk about the period from, say, for up to 5 years, where do you see the main challenges, and also what would you expect being the main sort of changes driven by the closer ties between the European Union and Ukraine?
Frankly speaking, if we are talking about the public sector, we are talking about the, again, variety of issues, because sometimes when people concentrated their attention on this sector, they're saying only about public servants. Because for Ukraine, public sector, this is, for example, health protection. Education, this is also public sector. A lot of other, again, spheres are also public sector. And of course, one of the major challenges, this is always what we are saying, this is number one, this is lack of political will to really to make these changes. Second, this is of course lack of resources, because if we would like to do something comprehensively, we need the huge resources. And unfortunately, I already mentioned that this is some kind of rent seeking, but this is competition to get these resources to generate advices, not for the real implementation of the real reforms. Because, for example, now we have a lot of so-called volunteers who are ready to support to the government. Yeah, but unfortunately, it's for me, it's to a certain extent strange. When we were, again, so young, when we were, again, were students or immediately after graduation, we also did a lot of voluntarily. But what we did, for example, it was the time of it was the last years of the Soviet time. We helped to our people in agriculture to, again, during the harvest, we did a lot of other things. That it was, for us, it was natural. It was a Soviet style or socialist style of economy. Now volunteers, they feel very comfortable themselves in the public offices, in the ministries. They are ready to provide advices. They're not ready to be responsible for something. They are not ready to be responsible for decision-making process. But they're not ready to, they are ready to educate, for example, or to advise to the public servants that it's better to be healthy, it's better to learn more foreign languages, it's better to do that, and that. And it's better to, it's necessary to improve the situation in the countryside, in the villages, but they're not going to, again, offer their services, for example, in the countryside, in the villages, just to teach children there, to help them to learn, for example, English, or to improve the healthcare system in the villages, or something like that. And unfortunately, this is some kind of mixture of volunteer movement with this rent-seeking process, and it's also one of the challenges. Then during this time, when we receive a lot of international support, and not only in form of advice, but also in form of real financial contribution, we can waste also these opportunities. We can so-called utilize these money resources, and the result will be absolutely opposite. Yeah? And will be negative. Sometimes it's better to fight for scarce resources rather than to get the huge amount of resources and not use it properly. And of course, it's for us, it's also important to have this maybe some kind of medium-term strategy or program and really properly implement this program during the next 5-7 years. Because if every year, every half a year, we will again generate new strategy, new program, and we will spend all these efforts for that, it will be an absolutely unpredictable situation. For public service, it will be unpredictable situation. And what we are facing now, that relatively young people who are very well educated already, they started, I don't know, even 10 years ago, they passed through all these, this is from my experience, through all these negotiations in the WTO with the European Union. Now they have no incentives to continue this job, to continue their service for the government, because they treated as the people from the previous time, yeah, and it's look like government don't need anymore their service. But the same can happen in the 5 years again. So we should, to a certain extent, to stop this behavior. And again, frankly speaking, the Pandora box, from my point of view, was open in 2005, when it was a decision of the coalition at that time. It was 3 parties: Socialist Party, Our Ukraine, Bloc Yulia Tymoshenko, and they sent to all the ministries their letter that they distributed between the 3 political forces all positions in the government. Yeah, they distributed the quotas: 40% for one party, 35% for another party, 25% for another party. And before that, the public service was totally depoliticized, totally, after the communist time. And now this is again in tension. This is a new law in the parliament. It was passed in the first reading about the public service. And this is again contained the provision about the total depolitization of the public service. A lot of, again, introduction, a lot of stability, the institute of the state secretaries and number of others, professional institutes. And this service should be treated as a professional service. Again, maybe not so huge like it was presented here. Maybe it's in scale much smaller, but professional and with the relevant, again, maybe salaries. But the salaries of the public servants cannot be better than, again, incomes of the society, frankly speaking. Otherwise, it's again generate or motivate to corruption and number of other negative impacts. So we have a number of different challenges, but again, political will and maybe some kind of stability and predictability.
Mr. Pyatnitsky, thank you so much for your response, for your contribution. Also, many thanks go to Anatoly Burmistr and to the very patient audience who've been very motivated and staying with us all this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.